Today we're talking all about drops. Let's check it out. What's up, guys? My name's Noah. I make music as Haterade, and you are watching The Productive Producer. Real quick, guys, before we get started, I wanted to mention my free finishing music checklist. This is a free checklist that I made to help me when I got stuck on trying to finish a song, not knowing what to do with it next, and I really think it'll help you guys too. Go check it out in the description. It's absolutely free. So whenever I'm working with my students, they usually send me a tune and they want the drop to hit hard, but it's just not hitting hard. After looking at probably a few hundred of these, I can say it usually comes down to two things: sample selection and dynamics. We'll talk about each of those right now. So I have a build-up and a drop here, and I have intentionally mismixed this drop. So let's take a listen to it and hear, see if you could pick out what the problems are.
Shake up the room.
So it's the idea isn't bad. It's not great, but there's a couple of really glaring issues that I'm sure that you could have picked out right away, right? And it's starting with the kick drum. The kick drum is the most important part of any EDM tune. It needs to be huge. So when we're looking at it here, let's listen to the sample here. I mean, that's not going to cut it. There's not much of a transient. It just doesn't really, it's not hitting hard. So what I could do here is we'll open this up and we'll hit manage sample file, and we'll find a new kick to swap out. So we can come in here. These are a list of my favorite kicks. I'm looking for one that has a little bit of a snap to it. That one could work. So it's still not quite there. I'm actually gonna find something that has a little bit of a shorter tail here. Let's go with, guys, check out Ricky Remedy's sample pack. It's so good. I'll put a link to it in the description. There we go. That's what I want. So you can hear this one's got it's got a sharp transient right there. That's going to hit hard in the mix. So what I could do here is I'm listening.
Shake up the room.
Still not there. So we need to pull that up. I'm going to pull the volume of that up and pull the volume of this group up a little bit more.
Shake up the room.
Already that adds a lot of extra life into this track. So next, what I could do is, obviously the snare right here. Both of these could be brought up a little bit in volume here.
Shake up the room. Shake up the room.
But I want this to have a lot of that punch too, just like the kick drum has. So I'm going to swap this one out as well. And by the way, I can come in here, go right click on the sample in clip view right here, and then go over here to replace files. This is a global sample swap. And I could just come in here and just swap out, and it goes through all the samples in the project. Super easy way to do it. Maybe we could give it something with a little bit more tail. Yeah, that one's a good one.
Up the room.
And we could probably bring these up now.
Up the room.
So you could hear like from the difference between from before. It's a pretty substantial change, and that was just by swapping out the samples and turning up the drums a little bit. That could really make an impact on your track as a whole. Let's talk about the second thing, which is the dynamics. In order for our drop to be loud, we can't have our buildup be loud as well. That's one unfortunate thing. We get like, as much as we'd love to have everything loud in our song, we can't have everything loud, because if everything is loud, then nothing's loud. Then the drop isn't impactful, because the intro and the buildup are just as loud as the drop. So we need to make some adjustments in that arena. So what we'll do here is, first of all, I want to reduce the volume of some of these guys right here. We're going to pull these guys down just a little bit. I'm going to pull these loops down in volume a little bit too. I'm going to pull the volume of this horn down a little bit. And I'm going to pull down the volume of this this pre-drop vocal down just a little bit as well.
Shake up the room. Shake up the room.
And we'll turn these up a little bit too. So we're creating that contrast, right? We want the waveform to look small right here, and then when the drop comes, it's going, because that's where the bass comes in. That's where everything comes in. That's another thing too. You want to make sure that your buildup doesn't have too much bass in it. Some people like to have their 808s going through the buildup, and that's not going to be a good look, because when the 808 finally comes in, when the drop hits, then who cares? It's already been playing for the whole song. We need to have that separation and create that dynamic range. Another thing you could do too, let's say you've done everything you possibly could, and you've swapped out the samples, you've adjusted the levels, you've done everything that you could think of, but you're still having trouble getting that drop to be separated from itself. Load a utility on the master. And if you're using a mastering chain, put this on after your mastering chain, at the end, afterwards. What you could do is you could take this whole section right here, and we'll just engage the automation there, and I'm going to reduce the gain from the start of the buildup to the end down, not much, just -2. -2 dB. And then we'll also do the same thing with the width, except we'll pull this one down to 60%. We don't want it all the way down, because we don't want the buildup, we don't want it to be completely quiet, and we don't want it to be completely mono. This width knob is what determines the stereo width. So if we can collapse the stereo width just a little bit as the buildup progresses, when the drop hits, all the stereo width comes back, and everything is, an explosion, pretty much. Explosion of stereo width, loudness, everything. And we're just creating that dynamic change just a little bit in this area to separate your buildup from your drop, which is super important. So a couple of bonus tips before we go today. Tip number 1 is watch out when you're using a limiter, because a limiter sets a volume cap on your song. It doesn't let anything go past that volume cap. So as you turn the input gain on the limiter up, everything else that isn't hitting that cap is getting pushed to the top. So it's reducing that dynamic range between your drop and your buildup. So keep that in mind if you're using a limiter. Try to make sure that you're still preserving that feeling of separation between the buildup and the drop. And the second thing is, it's not really highlighted in this example, but there's a lot of guys out there who use the same instrument in their buildup as their drop. And that's another separating factor that you have complete control over. If you use a sound that the listener hasn't heard yet in the drop, it adds another separating factor that will make your drop pop a little bit more. Hope you guys like this video. Remember, the free finishing music checklist is available in the description of this video. Absolutely free. I made it just for you guys, and we'll see you next Friday. Peace.